Hello, everyone. Juxtaposition here. Behind my right shoulder, your left side, is the swimming pool area for the Esalen Institute. This is the Esalen Institute on Pacific Coast Highway 1, PCH1. And this is the backyard right over the Pacific Ocean. I don't know, it's approximately 35 miles from the Hearst Castle, which is to the south. It's actually 11 miles south of Big Sur. I know a lot of people want to believe that the Esalen Institute, A, is an institute, and B, that it's in Big Sur, and it's really not. It's 11 miles south of Big Sur. Big Sur is, which is really a part of Spanish Swiss Bank Authority property. Big Sur derives from the Spanish words El Sur Grande, which has to do with a great mountainous area to the south of Carmel, Monterey. Monterey being the capital of Alta California. Monterey Bay, home to the Spanish Army and to the Spanish mission of Father Junipero Serra. The second mission installed in Alta California was the mission in Monterey, which was later moved because of the persistent pestering of the Swiss soldiers with the native Indian females. So they moved it over to Carmel River and called it Mission Carmel. It has a more proper name. You know, the first mission in California was installed in San Diego. It was called San Diego de Acala, San Diego de Acala. The second mission was installed in Monterey Bay, and it was the mission San Carlos, later changed to Mission Carmel. And then the third mission, of course, is the closest mission to the Esalen Institute. Mission San Antonio de Padua is the closest mission to this swimming pool. You'll notice this is not an Olympic swimming pool because the Esalen Institute is really like a Motel 6. It's no larger than a substantial Motel 6. The Esalen Institute can really carry a maximum of 250 guests. You might be able to shoehorn a few people in if you double and triple bunked the rooms to 300 guests total. Now, Wikipedia will tell you that they had folk concerts for 7 years on this property that brought 10 to 15,000 people to this property to listen to Joan Baez sing her folk songs, and people like Joni Mitchell, and of course Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young with Neil Young, and other Hollywood Warner Brothers produced groups. Keyword there is Warner Brothers produced groups, because Neil Young did not write his music. A 21-year-old polio survivor of Toronto didn't waltz into Hollywood, California, driving a black hearse, if you believe the story, make a U-turn on Sunset Boulevard, and then partner up with the Buffalo, Springfield, and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, where they formed eventually Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young for Warner Brothers. Okay, that is a BS story. And Neil Young did not write his songs. You know that's true because, you know, Neil Young is around 80 years old now. I think he's 79 years old today. He has burned through 4 marriages at least, and he has far more life experiences, and he hasn't wrote a song in 60 years. The clown cannot write a song. How is it that when he had no experience whatsoever and was lucky to get out of Toronto, Canada, you know, and not die of polio, that he pumps out, you know, Heart of Gold and Down by the River, but he cannot sing anything like Ohio today. He doesn't know how to write a single note. That's because he never wrote any songs. The Warner Brothers team, the people brought you Michael McDonald and the Doobie Brothers. People brought you Sammy Hagar and Montrose, the people that brought you Van Halen and David Lee Roth, and later Sammy Van Hagar, as Warner Brothers. That's who produces Neil Young, Warner Brothers. That's who produces Hare and Madonna also. Hare, Madonna, Neil Young. There's not a millimeter's worth of difference None of them write their own music. None of them. None of them. All right. Anyway, the closest Father Junipero Serra mission along the 21 mission chains that run from San Diego up here, where I'm videotaping this right now, is in Sonoma, the city of Sonoma in Sonoma County. That was Mission Solano. That was the 21st mission. And I am sending you this message from the 21st of 21 missions. But the third mission is the closest one to the Esalen Institute. It's Mission San Antonio. I've personally been there. Oh, yeah, on my bicycle. So I didn't really stick around long. I was on my way I was 155 miles into a 203-mile bike race. So I just grabbed some water. You should know that the mission, San Antonio, is, of course, dwarfed by a NATO army base called Fort Hunter Liggett, which occupies a couple of 100,000 acres of land, formerly known as the Hearst Land Trust. This property here that Wikipedia will tell you was owned by one of the founders' parents, the two founders, straw dogs, who are not really the founders at all. Michael Murphy's parents allegedly owned 127 acres, of which this property is part of. 127 acres. This property has a facility just off this campus that has 72 rooms, which handles 2 beds per room, plus a loft above where you could shoehorn in 216 people as overnight guests. This property right above it and to behind the swimming pool is the lodge. The lodge has conference rooms for breakout sessions for theology and ecology and yoga and meditation and New Age Hueyism. You know, what are the belief systems here promulgated by Michael Murphy and his cohort from Stanford University, where they got their postgraduate degree? Richard Price. Richard Price was the director of the Esalen Institute from 1962 up until his death, his murder in 1985, where Richard Price, who's been hiking in the hills above this Esalen campus, he's been hiking up in the Santa Lucia mountain range for 23 years. Then you're telling me at age 55, he suddenly forgets his footing and gets killed by a boulder coming down the Santa Lucia mountain, which is like 2,500, 3,000 foot of cliffing behind this, across the street from the Pacific Coast Highway 1, which is above the lodge here. It's important to know it's a lodge. It's not an institute. It's not an institute. It's just not an institute. It's a hotel. It's a hotel where they do yoga and massage therapy, and maybe they practice Buddhism or New Age Hueyism or Hare Krishnaism. And you should know the address of this property that we're looking at here is 55,000 Pacific Coast Highway 1, South Big Sur. It's 11 miles south of what we call the true Big Sur, the true property, Big Sur, which is where the Henry Miller Library is. Henry Miller is the Esalen Institute. Henry Miller, and he founded it in 1944. 1944 is when the Esalen Institute operated. It wasn't called the Esalen Institute. It was called the Henry Miller Sex Magic Clinic. Sex Magic of Henry Miller. Henry Miller, you got to go to school on Henry Miller. He resided in Big Sur proper, which today is known as the Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park. Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park. That's Big Sur. That's El Grande Sur. El Grande Sur is Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park for California, also known as New Helvetia, because California was really colonized by the Spanish, who were controlled by the Swiss, and Johann Sutter, who went and got 49,000 acres of land granted to him from the Monterey Presidio, talking to the governor of Alta California in 1839, which he converted into rice fields, alfalfa fields, almond orchards, cattle ranches, sheep ranching, goat ranching, citrus, peach trees, apricot trees, right? Vineyards, raisins, all done For 9 years, Johann Sutter built out New Helvetia. Today they call it Sacramento. Okay. And then he discovered gold on his lumber mill at Coloma on the American River in 1848. I believe it was January 24th, 1848. James Marshall, a 33-degree Mason, discovered gold on the American River after Johann Sutter spent 9 years murdering the indigenous Indian people and building farms and ranches. Then he rang the dinner bell in the form of gold rush, gold rush. And then we had the 49ers, which would be a year later. Everybody scrambled to come out to California. California is the place you want to be. So they loaded up their trucks and they moved to Beverly Hills, that is, swimming pools and movie stars. Do you know that Henry Miller lived in Beverly Hills on Beverly Glen Drive? You know where Mae Brussel lives? Where Mae Brussel's father, Edgar Magnan, lived? Mae Brussel is associated with the Esalen Institute before it was called the Esalen Institute. She was involved with sex magic with a man the same age as her father. Her father is Edgar Magnan. He is the rabbi to the Hollywood stars. His address is 3663 Wilshire Boulevard. Okay, that is a 666, mark of the beast. That's Mae Magnan Brussel's father. He has a cohort called Henry Miller, same exact age as Edgar Magnan, who is the rabbi to the stars of Hollywood. Henry Miller is an anthropologist, and in 1939, he was living in Paris, France, when the Nazis and the Germans invaded Paris. So Henry Miller, like Houdini on a magic carpet, he flees to Greece, I guess on an airplane, through Nazi air superiority. Then he spends about 9 months in Athens, Greece, and then he's summoned back to base in America because he's from New York. He's from Manhattan, and he goes back to Manhattan, New York, whereupon he's dispatched immediately to Beverly Hills, and he's given a home on Beverly Glen Drive in Beverly Hills. And his next assignment in 1944, he's in Beverly Hills in 1942, but in 1944, he's dispatched 11 miles north of the swimming pool in Pfeiffer, Big Sur State Park, what became the Henry Miller Library, in atop the mountain, atop the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and the sandy beaches, which take a lot of effort to get down to from the road. And Henry Miller built out sex magic and occultism. It was not Axel Huxley. It wasn't Huxley. It wasn't Aleister Huxley. It wasn't him. It was Henry Miller. Henry Miller was sex magic, created the hidden sex of Big Sur. Henry Miller, and he was born in 1891. Okay, and Henry Miller lived a long, long life. I wrote it down, so bear with me here. Henry Miller was born in 1891 and he died in 1980. You should know that his cohort they assigned to him was Mae Magnan Brussel, who is the daughter of the rabbi to the stars of Hollywood. Mae Magnan Brussel was eventually given a radio station show in the Carmel Mission Retail Shopping Center. Then she was later moved over to the Monterey area in Pacific Grove, which is next door to the Presidio Army base in Monterey, California, on the Monterey Bay. Pacific Grove is next door to Cannery Row. I don't know if you're familiar with Monterey, Carmel. We have Cannery Row, then we have the Presidio, then we have all these military bases. We have the Language Warfare Department for the Department of Defense. We have the Navy Postgraduate School and Linguistics School, and then we have Fort Ord, United States Army Base, which basically borders Seaside and Reservation Road that'll take you down to Salinas. So you'd have Salinas, you have Highway 68, I believe. You have the Santa Catalina Academy School where Abigail Folger went. You have the Monterey County Fairgrounds where they had the Monterey Pop Festival, International Pop Festival in 1967 in the Summer of Love. We had the International Pop Festival. It's north of here. north of here, about 45 miles north of here. I'm just guessing, but it's probably 40 to 45 miles north of here. And it's not a freeway. It's a very windy road. So you have to take an average speed of more like 25 to 35 miles per hour. You're not going to be getting faster than that. You can go faster than that, but you could also end up in the Pacific Ocean. So you're not going to go quicker than 25 to 35 miles an hour average speed driving up to Carmel, Monterey Peninsula. But you should know that Henry Miller was there first, Mae Brussel was there second, and then when Henry Miller got to be age 71, he was returned to base. They gave him a home in Pacific Palisades, where Randy Newman is, where Ronald Reagan had a house, where Arnold Screw Your Freedom Schwarzenegger has a house, right? Where Randy Newman, short people got no reason to live. It's money that matters. I love LA. Randy Newman, he has a house. Well, so did Henry Miller. He had a house there too. That's where they concocted The Wizard of Oz, was in Pacific Palisades. Anyway, Henry Miller was returned to base in the West Coast in Pacific Palisades. And immediately upon his departure from Big Sur proper, AKA Pfeiffer's Big Sur State Park, these two 32-year-old recently graduated with postgraduate degrees from Stanford University, which was Michael Murphy and Richard Price, opened the Esalen Institute in 1962 as they said goodbye to Henry Miller. So the baton was passed from Henry Miller and Mae Magnan Brussel to Michael Murphy and Richard Price. Okay, and that thus became the concept of the Esalen Institute, which hosted a folk music festival for 7 years, from 1974 to 1971. They allegedly hosted music festivals, but that's only partly true. Yes, they did play music near the swimming pool, but there's the idea that 10 to 15,000 people visited is a bald-faced lie. That's like the Altamont free concert. And you do know the first Joan Baez concert was a free concert for anyone who could get there. But you're not going to drive 4, 5, 6 hours to get to the Esalen Institute to hear Joan Baez play her acoustical guitar. That's ridiculous. And Joan Baez probably got paid and comped to be there. But in any case, she's a young woman, and you only have an audience of equivalent to The Godfather. Remember The Godfather Part 1, the wedding scene where Connie is married and Don Vito is paying for this elaborate wedding in, I believe it's Staten Island, that he's playing for this elaborate wedding. That's approximately the number of people that you could shoehorn in to the Esalen Institute backyard, is about 250 to 300 people. That's the maximum occupancy of that property. In terms of dealing with the porta potties, because see, they don't have any porta potties, and you can't get any porta potties down here. This is really, really remote area. So since you have no porta potties and all you have is basically 72 bathrooms, you can't really accommodate more than 300 people. I mean, there'll be lines. There would be lines. And not only that, the guests who have the rooms, they don't necessarily want to share their bathrooms with a bunch of strangers. But you could squeeze in, approximately 216 people can be accommodated at the Esalen Institute. If you add the lodge and converted the conference rooms and put beds and cots down, you could probably get 300 people to stay overnight at the Esalen Institute. 300 maximum capacity. So the story that there were 10 to 15,000 people, I've personally been on the property. I've ridden my bicycle past this property probably a dozen times in my entire life. I've been on their parking lot twice. I didn't see a single car in their parking lot. Every time I went past the Esalen Institute, no one was home. Now, there might be a caretaker that I didn't see. There could be a car parked behind, the building. I didn't snoop around and do a perimeter check. I didn't do that. I just went in the parking lot, nosed around a little bit, and then continued down to Lucia, where the store is. The store is 4.5 miles south. And I stopped and I got a Coca-Cola to get my blood sugar up. And I got some peanuts for salt. And then I continued on to, at that time I was going to Cambria. And I rode to Cambria. Carmel to Cambria is 101 miles. Carmel to Cambria, 100 miles. From the Carmel Mission Inn or the Carmel Mission Basilica to the town of Cambria, which is about 9 miles south of the Hearst Castle, it's a 102-mile distance. And the Esalen Institute is more or less halfway. So it's like 45 to 50 miles from Carmel is the Esalen Institute. All right. That'll give you some idea. There's no services at the Esalen Institute. You cannot buy gas for your car. There's no store. You can't buy beer. You have to rely on whatever food is in their deep sub-zero refrigerator. Now, if you believe all the poppycock about, Neil Young and Crosby Stills and Joan Baez and Joni Mitchell and some other, people who performed at military intelligence concerts, like Altamont or like Woodstock. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young performed on September 13th, 1969, which was really 1 month after the Woodstock Festival, which was 1 week after the murder of Abigail Folger, who Bill Graham worked for, Abigail's mother. And they sang a tribute song for Abigail called Soul Sacrifice. It's an instrumental with no lyrics, and that was played to memorialize the bayonet murder, 28 bayonet strikes to Abigail Folger's dead body at Cielo Drive, aka Sunbrook Drive. Sunbrook Drive, she was killed on Sunbrook Drive, but we call it Cielo Drive because that confuses all the profane, clueless people that don't know what's going on in this world. Anyway, what I'm telling you, this is done just a month after Abigail Folger was killed, that Neil Young, David Crosby, Stephen Stills performed at the swimming pool on September 13th, 1969, a month after the murder of Sharon Tate and Abigail Folger, and to an audience of perhaps 250 to 300 people. There's no 15,000 people. They don't have any porta potties. They don't even have one porta potty. And you would need a minimum of 500 porta potties. Okay. You could never have a significant amount of people overnight. It's a 2-day festival. It's the 13th and the 14th. So everyone's going to stay overnight. So you're going to need minimum 500 porta potties. And I don't know who's going to pay for that. That's a lot of money because the porta potties be hauled, 50 miles south, 50 miles back. It's a 100-mile drive. You'd have to get the porta potties out of Salinas. I don't think they have enough in Monterey. I don't think they have enough in Carmel. I know they don't have 500 porta potties in the town of Carmel. I know they don't. So I think you're going to be looking at Greenfield. You're going to look at the King City and Soledad and Salinas to get those porta potties, and to get them transported to the Esalen Institute. It's going to be a huge bill. It's going to be $100,000 to get the porta potties you need. So I don't believe it ever happened. I'm not buying it. I don't even buy the narrative that the Esalen Institute is about this poppycock and balderdash principles of having to do with human potential and the center of theory and research. The goals of the Esalen Institute are theory and research, also known as military acronym CTR, which span a wide range of commitments, projects, and passions, such as ecology, organic food, theology, massage therapy, yoga, hiking, spirituality, personal growth, rising to your human potential, right? That's all part of the Being movement. Remember, that's in January 1967. It was Timothy Leary of Harvard University and University of California, Berkeley. It was Timothy Leary who uttered those words: tune in, turn on, and drop out. That's what the Esalen Institute's all about. That's pacification and control. Because see, if you're taking LSD or psilocybin, smoking weed, doing yoga, or listening to Neil Young and Crosby Stills and Joan Baez, then you are definitely not protesting the Vietnam War. You're as pacified as you're in a strategic hamlet. And the Esalen Institute is in a total strategic hamlet. Nobody is getting out of there alive unless they're given permission. All right. This is the new worldview that they promote at the Esalen Institute, new worldview. But the new worldview is the old worldview. It's feudalism and fascism. feudalism and fascism. Let me say it again, feudalism and fascism. And the Esalen Institute is hardly original at all. Do remember that the Esalen Institute in 1962 is running concurrently with the Church of Synanon and Chuck Dietrich in Santa Monica, and in Oakland, California, and in Marin County. They are operating a Church of Synanon on RCA's property on Tomales Bay. In other words, there are 3 locations for the Church of Synanon: Santa Monica in Los Angeles, and Oakland in Alameda County near the Hells Angels, on Lake Merritt. On Lake Merritt at the Athens Gym, there is a Church of Synanon operation in the upstairs unit of the gymnasium. And they're operating on RCA Radio Corporation of America property. Remember, they hired Jose Menendez to run porn for RCA. And then later at Caracol Pictures, he ran porn for Noam Bloom and Vajka. What was his name? Andrew Vajna and I forgot his name, Klaus. Noam Bloom was the godfather of pornography, as his father was. He inherited his father's business. And he was purchased by Caracol Pictures, which, Oliver Stone does business with, Arnold Schwarzenegger does business with, Sylvester Stallone. They produced Rambo 2, Caracol Pictures, and they produced porn that was created by Noam Bloom, but produced by Jose Menendez in Woodland Hills and Canoga Park, and Van Nuys, Los Angeles County. Yes. And they ran a church up there too called Krishna Venta's Fountain of the World Church. That ran from the end of World War II through 1958. Then Chuck Dietrich's Church of Scientology was founded in 1958 using Alcoholics Anonymous. And that carried through for decades along parallel with the Esalen Institute, which I've told you is the Henry Miller Library Institute of Sex Magic. It's Henry Miller. They should call it the Henry Miller Institute. Esalen is just a ripoff of the indigent Indians. The Indians, they're called the Esselens. The native people are called the Esalens, but the Spanish eradicated them and committed cultural genocide upon them. And that's a whole different video. The Spanish conquering this land, possession is 90% of this land. This land that Big Sur sits on, and that the Esalen Institute in Lucia and Fort Hunter Liggett and the Hearst Castle and Calhoun Pass and Salinas and Monterey Peninsula and Fort Ord and the Naval Postgraduate School and the Department of Linguistics and Pacific Grove and Pebble Beach. You hope you recognize these names: Soledad, Greenfield. That land belongs to Switzerland, the town of King City and the town of Jolon and the entire Hearst Castle property, which was like 400,000 acres. This land has been divided and subdivided many, many times. It was always under Swiss bank control, always, and it's never left Swiss bank control. But it was transferred to the Spanish, then to the Mexicans, who then made land grants and gave it out to their soldiers. The Mexican soldiers, officers first, Big Sur as the Big Sur Land Trust or the Hearst Land Trust, or it as Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park, or you've heard of the Esalen Institute with 127 acres, or have you heard of Fort Hunter Liggett belonging to NATO, or Mission San Antonio, Mission Carmel, Mission Soledad, Mission San Luis Obispo, which is in a different county. You've heard of the Trust for Public Land in 1972. You've heard of the California Rangeland Trust of 1998. You've heard of the Calhoun Pass at 2,400 feet of elevation, which me personally has been over that pass, I don't know, at least a dozen times, both directions, east-west, west-east. The distance from the Mission in Carmel to the town of Greenfield, which is on Highway 101, is 52 miles. So, which I've done that ride, made a U-turn and come back. That's a 104-mile ride. from the Carmel Mission Inn Hotel to Greenfield, stop, get something to eat, make a U-turn, go back. And of course, you got to go over the Calhoun Pass, both sides. There's only one way in and out of there. Now, there is a road to Salinas. There is a couple roads to Salinas, actually, more than one, but they're few and far between. There's also a Buddhist indoctrination center very close to Calhoun Pass. And there was a young woman, 33, 34 years old, who was murdered a year ago. And then there was a hiker who was murdered recently this year, about 33 years old. I believe she was 33, and she was killed just like the founder of the Esalen Institute was killed, Richard Price. Do you know he gets hit by a boulder while hiking in 1985? Do you believe that story? He's 32 years old when he founds the Esalen Institute with his cohort from Stanford University, Michael Murphy. Don't forget, they're just part and parcel. Richard Albert graduated with a PhD in psychology, and so too did Mae Brussels. She went to Stanford also. Look at the players from Stanford University. You know them. They're crisis actors. They're fake, right? The most recent one is Sam Altman. He didn't even graduate. And we have Elizabeth Holmes. She didn't graduate either. We have Sam Bankman French Fry. He didn't attend Stanford, but he grew up on the campus next to the Hoover Institute. We have Peter Thiel. He did graduate in literature from Stanford. He has no degrees in computer science. Peter Thiel doesn't know anything about smart dust. He knows nothing about electrical engineering. He doesn't know anything about big data mining. He doesn't know anything about databases. He knows about literature and sociology. That's what his degree was in at Stanford. He knows nothing about technology. Peter Thiel, who graduated from Stanford. We have Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover of the Hoover Dam, yeah, was president of the United States. Was in the first graduating class of Stanford. Herbert Hoover. George Shultz, a fellow of the Hoover Institute and head of the State Department. Henry Kissinger, who went to Harvard. George Shultz went to Princeton, but they both lived and got houses at Stanford for their role in the Hoover Institute. Milton Friedman, same thing. Victor Davis Hanson, he has a house, a free house, and he's a conservative think tank fellow of the Hoover Institute. Phil Knight of Nike, he concocted his idiotic steroid selling yellow wristbands and sneakers using doped athletes. Phil Knight, MBA from Stanford. Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the founders of Google. Does anyone really believe they founded it in the garage owned by the department head of physics, Stanley Wojcinski, in his garage on Margarita Avenue in Menlo Park? That we have two Stanford clowns that built a multiple billion-dollar company, right? Peter Thiel, Palantir, multiple billion-dollar company. Richard Price and Michael Murphy, just like Larry Page and Sergey Brin, just like Henry Kissinger and George Shultz, just like Sam Bankman French Fried, and Elizabeth Holmes, right? Michael Murphy and Richard Price, the two fake founders of the Esalen Institute, to replace Henry Miller, who's having an affair with Mae Brussels. And Mae Brussels was divorced twice, and Henry Miller was divorced at least 4 times. And they were having an affair whilst they were married. Not that it matters, obviously. And Richard Alpert, who is teamed with Timothy Leary. And Richard Alpert has a PhD in psychology from Stanford. And he's paired with a UC Berkeley psychologist degree, Timothy Leary, and their department heads at Harvard University. Harvard is an overlap between UC Berkeley and Stanford. Look at the clowns from UC Berkeley that are in the Esalen story. Joan Didion, she talks about it in her writing. She is a complete phony fake author. Joan Didion graduated from UC Berkeley. Hey, Magnum Brussels, she went to UC Berkeley also, but she graduated from Stanford. So Mae Brussels covers both UC Berkeley and Stanford. Joan Didion covers UC Berkeley and West Hollywood and Malibu. Timothy Leary, PhD from UC Berkeley. Steve Wozniak, he got his degree in electrical engineering from the UC Berkeley Engineering School, mostly done on the 4th floor of Corey Hall at 2626 Phoebehurst Avenue, where Ted Kaczynski mailed the Unabombers in 1982 and 1985. 2 Unabombs exploded in Steve Wojcinski's former classroom. He was on founding Apple Computer with a college dropout from community college, Steve Jobs. Don't you see? Steve Wozniak he graduated from Berkeley with an electrical engineering degree. But it was Timothy Leary, tune in, turn on, drop out, and Richard Albert of Stanford, who are giving LSD and electroshock treatments to Ted Kaczynski, who later is implicated in sending bombs, which means that Ted Kaczynski and the United States Postal Service are partners, because Ted Kaczynski didn't deliver his Unibombs, the Postal Department did. So if you're upset about bombs exploding in buildings, you should blame the post office. They delivered the bomb. They delivered the bomb. Ted Kaczynski did not deliver any bombs. It's like Charlie Manson being blamed for the Sharon Tate murder. He most definitely did not kill anyone, nor was he charged with hands-on murder. He's charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Is a huge distinction and difference, right? Anyway, Ernest Lawrence went to Yale, but he became a department head and the first director of the Department of Energy's Lawrence Livermore Weapons Lab. You see? So you've got Rachel Horowitz, and you've got Jamie Kate of the Innovative Genomic Institute. You've got Jennifer Doudna, Ted Kaczynski, a math professor at Berkeley. Peter Schiff got an MBA from the House School of Business, and he is a gold bug that appears on television. You shouldn't believe a word he says. Then you got Phoebe Hearst donating hundreds of millions of dollars to University of California Systems. May Brussel, Joan Didion, Timothy Leary, Steve Wozniak, Ted Kaczynski. So my point is, that's Berkeley's contribution to the show, the theatrical show. And Stanford has brought you Google and the Esalen Institute. But don't forget, at the same time, we have Jim Jones and the People's Temple. They did more damage than the Esalen Institute did. And they operated for quite a few years. And then we also had Church of Satan with Anton LaVey, whose real name is Howard Levy. And then after him, we had Michael Aquino and the Temple of Set. They operated. And we have the Hare Krishnas with Prabhupada and Srila Hansadudu. I'm sure those are household names for you. But without the Esalen Institute, life would go on just fine. We have Srila Hansadudu in Berkeley, who is the head of the West Coast region of the Hare Krishnas. His boss is Prabhupada, who I think is in London and in New Delhi. And Hare Krishna functions just fine. Church of Satan replaced by the Temple of Set, no problem. What about Church of Scientology? What do you think's more dangerous? Church of Scientology, Tom Cruise and John Travolta, or do you think it's Richard Price and Michael Murphy of the Esalen Institute? Do you think it's Joan Baez or Neil Young or Joni Mitchell? Who's more dangerous? I would say that it would be Church of Scientology, People's Temple, Fountain of the World Church, the Rainbow Colony in Mendocino with Winona Ryder, which her godfather is Richard Alpert of Stanford and Timothy Leary of Berkeley. That's her and she's Jewish. Her name is Laura Horowitz. There is no Winona Ryder. That's her stage name. Her real name is Laura Horowitz. Got it? Anyway, if you study the Esalen Institute, you'll find it's just a daisy node on the network. It's part of a daisy chain because it connects up with the Hare Krishnas and the Church of Synanon and the Church of Satan and the Temple of Set and the Rainbow Colony and the People's Temple and Heaven's Gate and the Children of God in Laurel Canyon. Is that there's no shortages of institutes, fake institutes, and fake phony religions, like Church of Satan and Hare Krishnas and Est. Don't forget Est, right? That's about self-improvement also. And multi-chain, daisy chain, multi-level marketing, which the Mormons are all about, right? So throw the LDS Mormons into the mix too. They're just as guilty as the Roman Catholics are. All right, so I will post a boatload of footnotes in today's video so that you can go and learn more about the component parts of what really is a daisy chain, nodes on the network, which is what the Esalen Institute's all about. They effectively closed the Esalen Institute in 2017 when there was a massive mudslide. We've had a lot of fires, we've had a lot of mudslides, we've had a lot of road closures over the recent 10, 15 years. And that property is 100% controlled by the military. You're talking about over 400,000 acres of land controlled by the military, under the guise that it's the Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park, or it's part of the Randolph, Hearst Land Trust, or it's part of a New Age Kabbalah, Save the Seals movement. Like, I've been doing this a long time. Switzerland owns all the land. They owned the land before Donald Trump signed the big, beautiful bill. They owned all the land. So it's just symbols. Remember, signs and symbols rule our world. That's why we have the obelisk. And that's why we have this pretend land trust. The bank owns everything. Let's do a little kaleidoscope of photographs, shall we? To see what else I've got here in my bag of goods. And then we'll say so long and put this baby in the can. So this is the Monterey Bay Peninsula. This is where they developed the second mission of the 21 missions, was done in this bay. This is the Monterey Bay, and to the left, to the middle of the page, is the Pebble Beach area. And you're worming your way around. Actually, I believe that this is Pebble Beach is more to the bottom of the page here. This is where they have 3 different golf courses: Spanish Bay, Pebble Beach, etc. And Carmel is at the bottom of the page. We have Ocean Beach with all of its sand is in the bottom of the page. I can't point my finger and do the videos at the same time. Anyway, this was the second mission of the 21 missions, was created in Monterey. It was then moved to Carmel, the little town of Carmel, about a year after they established it, which would be 1770, and they moved it in 1771. This is long before the so-called Revolutionary War of Independence back in Boston, Massachusetts. The Spanish were divvying up all this property. Had nothing to do with George Washington or Paul Revere at all, ever. All right, so what else I got here? This is the obelisk. If you Wikipedia Geneva, they will tell you they don't have an obelisk. This photograph is taken in the city center of Geneva. So somebody is fibbing and lying, and I'm going to say it's Wikipedia. Wikipedia fails again to not get the truth. All right, what else I got? Well, I got more. Don't worry. This is the New Age Hui. This is where we're going. This is zero trust. We're going to a zero trust world of real ID verified authentication. And if you don't agree to get a real ID, if you don't agree to be vaccinated, if you don't agree to be ingest lots of aluminum chalk into your body, then you won't be able to get into a liquor store and buy cigarettes or potato chips or beer. It's just that simple, because the perimeter is guarded by men with guns. It's actually being guarded by, direct energy weapons, photonic weapons, and it's brought to you with the sweet face of Jennifer Ann Doudna, who has a Nobel Prize in chemistry and for molecular engineering, Frankenstein monstering, CRISPR therapeutics, destroying your cellular structure. And she tells you it's precision medicine and we're going to cure cancer. She's lying like a rug. She is lying like a rug. This is the so-called founder of the Esalen Institute. This is Richard Price. His parents institutionalized him. He graduated from Harvard, and he got engaged to be married. His parents institutionalized him in Connecticut, and they annulled his marriage. He got out of the insane asylum, came out to California, went to Stanford University. Then they paired him with Michael Murphy to create the Esalen Institute in 1962, which again coincides with the retirement of Henry Miller at age 71. Don't forget that Jim Jones was operating at this time that the Esalen Institute was founded. Jim Jones was started before them. He started in Indianapolis, and he moved out to San Francisco, and he worked with all the people, like Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, Willie Brown, George Moscone. This is May Magnan Brussel. She was paired with Henry Miller, a man her father's age. He's about 26 years older than herself, and they practiced sex magic. I think they might have done some of that at the People's Temple and probably at the Esalen Institute. What do you think? What do you think? I don't know. Anyway, that takes me back to base. You know, my main base is San Francisco, and the second base, as everybody knows, is I am a member in good standing of the Esalen Institute, so I can talk trash about it because I pay my dues, right? All right, look from the footnotes, enjoy yourself, and do like and share my videos. Become a paid member and do get yourself a handsome juxtaposition mug that you can put an adult beverage into if you think this content is too esoteric or too brutally truthful. I do run a brutal truth channel, but it is a cathedral building channel because no education is free. You can't get any education for free. If you don't put in the work and pay the bills, you won't respect what you learn. You'll forget it quickly, quick like a bunny rabbit. So get yourself a juxtaposition mug, which you can buy without being a member, and become a paid member, and do like and share my videos because I am heavily shadow banned. Thanks for coming. Take care now. Bye.